in some way, the capability to personalize your experience by putting groceries and recipes into your cart is fully dependent upon our understanding of your needs. And that understanding comes from asking you directly and observing your interactions with our shopping experience.
You're listening to Retail Remix, your inside access to candid conversations with the people shaping retail's future. Here's your host, Alicia Esposito.
Folks, I am so excited to share today's episode with you because I am a big fan of the brand that we're speaking with today, Hungryroot. Now, Hungryroot is part of this much larger movement for food, grocery shopping, right? Being able to get groceries easily delivered right to your doorstep. But what I've found so fascinating from a business perspective about Hungryroot is how they don't just provide the ease and convenience of that delivery model, but also the level of personalization that really makes me feel like the brand knows me. Now, Alex Weinstein, Chief Digital Officer of Hungryroot, refers to the brand as their customers' own food personal assistants. And honestly, as a working mom and wife and someone that has very volatile schedules, I can relate to that. I like being able to balance the routine and consistency of a standard meal planning experience, plus being able to throw in a few fun items that I wouldn't normally pick. Now, this is a very tricky balance, a very nuanced exercise. So during today's conversation with Alex, we get into how the company does it. Listen in, because there are a lot of twists and turns, a lot of layers to this conversation, but the heart of it all is how the company uses data, AI, and incredible testing and learning in order to continually optimize that customer experience. Alex, thanks so much for being on the show. It is so great to have you on today.
Alicia, thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
I know. I am so excited to chat with you. I'm going to be transparent. I'm a Hungryroot customer, so being able to go behind the curtain today is very, very exciting. So are you good to jump right in?
Let's do this. And oh my God, thank you so much for being a customer. I cannot wait to dive right in with you and hear what's right and wrong. What are we doing well and what can we be doing better?
All right, awesome. I'm going to take you up on that offer. But first, I want to learn a little bit more about you. So as I was prepping for this chat, I saw that you've had a few successful runs at some big companies. So eBay, Grubhub, very notable names. I know you've been at Hungryroot for a few years at this point, but I'm curious, what made you decide Hungryroot was the next best place for you? Like, how did you determine it was where you wanted to work? What resonated with you? Like, what really stood out about the brand, the business, the mission, anything?
Thank you for asking. I'm coming up on 3 years now. And frankly, the reasons that got me to join back then are still the reasons I show up at work every day, and they get me so excited. Maybe the most important one is the impact that we're having on people's lives. And it's something that I saw firsthand earlier in my life. When I was a student, I was eating lots of frozen dinners, very processed foods, and I wasn't feeling so great. And at a moment when I started doing even the simplest of the cooking, you can kind of notice this yourself. And we know that these days, it is so difficult for so many families to really get together around the table. And it's so hard for them to put healthy, diverse meals onto the table to feed the family and the kids. It's in our lives that are so busy. It is something that we really want to feed our families in a healthy way, and something that's just so hard to achieve. And when I was looking at Hungryroot, I saw a community that has been able to achieve that. And I saw that in our Facebook group. I was examining this back 3 years ago. It was much smaller, but the sentiment was exactly the same sentiment as is there now. It's like the happiest place on the internet. You see families talking about getting together around the dinner table several times a week after not doing it for years. You see moms talking about kids eating vegetables for the first time. You see both parents doing the prep and cooking together because it's so easy, and eating healthy foods as opposed to ordering very expensive delivery or taking hours doing the meal prep and cooking. It's just such a delight to see the impact that we're having on so many. And 3 years in, this feeling is still really strong in me. It's just that we get to touch a lot more families now. You can just see this by the volume in our group, in our Facebook group. It's just as passionate. It's just a lot more people. It's quite a delight. So that was the most important reason and still is the most important reason. And maybe the second one I'll give you is this feeling of potential, of how much better grocery cooking and meal prepping can be made if the shopping experience was reinvented from scratch. So often, whenever I hear of our customers doing the preparation of meals for their family for the upcoming week, it's hours of planning the dishes, going to the grocery store, browsing the aisles. It really is so much mental load. And with Hungryroot, because we've reimagined that shopping experience to really serve as a personal assistant that helps you live a better life, it really changes that pattern. And our customers spend minutes preparing and shopping for their foods as opposed to this very labor-intensive, mundane, and not very fun thing that each family has to do each week. So this reinvention, the potential for reinvention, is something that got me excited 3 years ago. And we've been able to really make a ton of traction on that potential, with AI now driving 2/3 of our sales and AI being really at the core of how we realize that potential.
Oh, this is awesome. And you shared a lot. So I think over the course of our conversation, we're going to kind of chip away at all of these elements. And what really resonated with me, Alex, in this response is that you essentially married the emotional aspects of this experience with the technical aspects of the experience, which I think as practitioners, as professionals in the retail and digital space, our listeners can relate to that, right? Because you want to create these amazing experiences that people love. And there's that ripple effect of being able to sit at the table together and everyone has a great experience, or they're cooking together and it's a great experience. But in order for that end goal or that end result to happen, there's a lot of work that needs to happen behind the scenes, underneath the hood, however you want to explain it, right? And I guess that ties to your expertise, because what I found interesting about your background is you don't just have experience in product development and marketing. There's also that data science side of things. And you mentioned AI, right? So what would you consider to be your top priorities and mandates now as Chief Digital Officer, as someone who is helping zero in on those areas of potential and transformation for the Hungryroot business?
I thank you so much for asking, Alicia. I have a bit of a split personality disorder is how I like to describe
Left and right
myself,
brain, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a lot of engineers that like marketing or a lot of marketers that go deep into data science models. And I just happen to really love both sides of this. And I think in some way, this background has helped me really be effective in this role where we are attempting to make something very emotional, very central to people's lives, like food, work drastically better through something deeply technical like AI. And in my mind, you're only able to do a good job with this if you deeply understand the psychology behind the customer's problem. Like, what exactly is going on for them? What have they tried? Why are they interested in this problem at all? Why haven't the other solutions worked? And that depth of understanding has helped me throughout the years really lead the team through finding solutions that will help serve our customers better. And I'm really proud of what we've been able to achieve. Probably most important metric we'll look at is how well do we serve our customers after they join, the retention. And we've been able to move this by 50% in the first 6 months of customers' tenure. Our customers stick around a lot more. And this, to me, really is the core of what we're after, understanding our customers more deeply so that they stick around more. This is something that has allowed us to achieve industry-leading retention too. Exactly that melding of psychology with AI that can kind of capitalize on these needs.
Yeah. And I do want to dig a little bit deeper into this idea that you alluded to early in our conversation, that there is a mental load to all of this, right? I mean, I feel like even 5, 10 years back, you would hear about grocery shopping or grocery as a retail category, right? And, it's very habitual. You had your list. You didn't do a lot of prep. Like you had like your core dishes that you would make. But now I feel like it is such a, not just a mentally overwhelming thing, but it can be emotional too, right? Like depending on your individual circumstances, your goals, your lifestyles, it's like you are either uber passionate about picking everything out yourself and having total control over that meal prepping process, while others, maybe find it overwhelming and, they want to do different things, but don't know where and how to start. I personally, I guess I'm kind of in both of those camps, personally, speaking of split personalities, depending on my, like what's happening in my world, in my life, I kind of fall into those two different worlds, which transparently is why I like Hungryroot so much. So you mentioned the data and getting into the psychology of the consumer. So what have been some of the latest things you've learned about your consumer, what they want from the experience, the level, I guess, of like personalization and recommendation that they want versus the more discovery-based aspect of all of this? Because again, it could be very routine-based, or there's that discovery aspect too that kind of shakes things up a little bit, so to speak, when you're in that type of mood.
My God, you're hitting up on maybe some of the most important aspects that our customers talk about. So allow me to touch upon many of them. First one around how it now feels that it's more work. It used to be less so, and now the mental load is real and is becoming more and more significant when it comes to shopping for food. I think that is very real. Some of this has to do with our understanding of healthy, right? And there's just so many different constraints that consumers now want to follow, from kind of attempting to eat a little bit more protein, perhaps because you're working out, or maybe having one of the kids who has a allergy, right? And maybe one of the family members, for ethical reasons, is choosing to be a vegetarian. All of these constraints, the chief household officer has to respect, and as such, design meals in such a way that they are healthy and they follow all of these constraints. And it's a ton of work. And especially if you're attempting to not serve exactly the same thing every week and feed your family with cool and exciting things, and finally have your kids try some veggies and eat them on a regular basis, it's exhausting. And when we survey our customers, they tell us exactly this, that food prep is, and meal planning for the week is associated with this feeling of overwhelm. And ultimately, our job, the job that we solve, yes, it is obviously grocery delivery and helping consumers make their meals, but in a big way, it's stress reduction. That's what we do if we do our job well. And similarly, we recently surveyed our customers, and 95% of them tell us that they are less stressed after they signed up for Hungryroot, because we remove this deeply stressful activity from their weeks and allow them to spend that number of hours on something more enjoyable, something that is less mundane and less painful. So all of this is the psychology behind this. We may be in the food business, but really we're in the stress reduction business. Now, to the how part of it, exactly like you said, there's really two competing needs. One is the need to be understood and have my personal assistant, my digital assistant, do the work for me because they understand me super well. That's a deep fundamental need. And then there's the other part that's about control and the desire to maybe hand select something for yourself. And what we find is our customers do both. Now, each week, 2/3 of our sales are what the AI places into people's carts. That is, for the majority of the purchases, our average consumer trusts us to select the right recipes and groceries for them. But the remaining third, that's what they select themselves. And I think that interaction, combination of an assistant that does some of the work for you and the flexibility to have the full control and say, no, you know what, this week I feel like trying something completely different. Let me actually add some snacks that I've never tried before. And maybe the system doesn't even know about the fact that I'm interested in them because this is something new that I heard from one of my friends, these awesome new snacks. Let me just add them on and try them. That control is also very important. And we think that by offering both of these, we can allow our customers the flexibility that they want. And while most of what they take up is what we recommend, without that flexibility, we couldn't be great at recommendations either.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of the folks listening either are new to Hungryroot or don't quite know the entire experience. So maybe we back up a little bit because I think it's important to know like what this onboarding journey, so to speak, looks like. So once people sign up, right, that's kind of the data foundation of their experience, right? So they share a little insight into not just frequency, but also their dietary restrictions, their goals, preferences, and those things can change at any time, right? Like that's another area where the customer has full control and they can make those adjustments, and that feeds the personalization engine. Is that right?
That is exactly right.
Okay, awesome. So then once people sign up using those parameters, they start to get those recommendations. And what I find most interesting as someone in the industry who covers personalization, but also as a customer, right? It's like it starts to pick up on what you vote up and down, like from a recipe standpoint, from a product standpoint, but also what you ultimately get in your boxes every week, right? So can you expand upon like those different data inputs that fuel the personalization aspect? And then over time, like as you start to add newer items and like you said, like, oh, I heard about this brand and I want to try it, or maybe I need more snacks this week. Does that adjust things over time as well? This may be a bit too in the weeds, so forgive me if that's the case. But again, I'm fascinated by like all these different elements that go into fueling that balance of inspiration and recommendation, but also like the habit side of things, right? So can you expand upon like all those different data inputs that play into this and then ultimately shape the experience over time?
Most definitely. And our inspiration really is to create a digital experience that acts as if it's your personal assistant that's helping you feed your family. What would that personal assistant do if you were to hire a real human? Well, they'd probably have an intake survey and say, do you have any allergies? Do you have any dietary restrictions? What are your health goals? Great, you're trying to eat more protein. Are you following any specific diet? How old are your kids? What are your favorite proteins? Are there any flavors that you dislike? That's what would happen during the onboarding survey. And that is very helpful for that human assistant, the one that we're imagining, to do a good job for you as they get started. But as they prepare foods for you for the first couple of weeks, you're going to give them feedback. And if they're good at their job, they will ask you for feedback proactively. That's the piece that you're referring to around like, hey, this salad last week, did you like it? What was it about it that was particularly good? They might ask if they're particularly good at their job so that they could afterwards infer what was it about the salad that you liked or disliked to offer you more stuff like this. Then afterwards, they will quietly observe you if you end up not taking them up on some recommendations. That's really what our digital experience does. We'll place some recipes and groceries into your cart. You might remove a few. We will take note of this. You'll add something else. You'll rate some items. You'll give us pointers in other ways through the interactions with the shopping experience. All of this is feeding the algorithm so that the next box, your next cart, will become better. In some way, the capability to personalize your experience by putting groceries and recipes into your cart is fully dependent upon our understanding of your needs. And that understanding comes from asking you directly and observing your interactions with our shopping experience. And our measure of success is probably the most important factor that we look at whenever we say, are we doing a good job with personalization or not, is what portion of recommendations are our customers taking us up on? The higher it is, the better we understand them.
That's really interesting. Then a quick follow-up question, I guess, there, because I know I personally largely use the service through my mobile device. How are you seeing behaviors differ, if at all, between the devices that consumers are using? Because I know when I'm on my mobile device, it's a lot about utility, right? It's being able to do things quickly, efficiently, look things over, get the job done. But I'm curious if you've noticed any nuance or differences in terms of how consumers are engaging changing with your brand and with the digital experience, depending on the device that they're using?
It's actually quite interesting, Alicia. When I started, Hungryroot just had a website. We did not have any native applications. And this was one of the first things that I pursued with the team, was to create a native experience, because quite obviously for a subscription service like ours that of course has to do with food, apps are a really big part of creating an optimal experience. And that's exactly what ended up happening. We see a lot of our customers now signing up from the website. The vast majority of them sign up from web, but then afterwards, when they go in and interact with our brand, perhaps to customize their box or give us feedback about the recipes that we send them, or maybe take a look at the cooking instructions, all of those interactions are happening inside our apps. And what I find is that consumers are really busy. That's really why they're hiring us to do this job for them. They don't have the time to be perusing the digital aisles with 50,000 SKUs on sale. And yes, clicking on those SKUs and searching the website is faster than going to a physical store, but it still is the time that they would rather be spending with their family. So I'm not surprised that a lot more of those interactions are happening on the phone, on the go, and they take a minute or two to plan the meals for next week. That's why they're finding value, because that minute or two are enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess this kind of ties to the back end of the experience in a lot of ways, right? Because you're talking about this great personalization engine, this personal assistant that you're providing to your customers to make this entire process easier. And I'm curious how that ultimately impacts the back end of the business, which is supply chain, operations, fulfillment even. Like, how do those lines connect for you? Like, what are some of the key areas of investment for Hungryroot to ensure that you're not only providing that great front end experience, but that you can fulfill upon the promise that you're ultimately making to the customer around that ease and personalization?
Interestingly, Alicia, this personalization capability for the consumer is highly synergistic with our ability to do a good job for them on the back end. Because if we're able to predict what a consumer is going to like for their next box with high confidence, we are able to predict what we should be ordering for our warehouses with high confidence. That has helped us keep our food waste at the facility drastically lower than comparable businesses in the grocery space, to the tune of 10 times lower in terms of food waste and stuff that goes bad. Exactly this personalization capability. That's kind of piece one. Piece two has to do with kind of the deep flexibility of our supply chain that results from our position as an advisor. Let me give you some intuition about that. There was a moment last summer when raw chicken really spiked in price. And in a typical grocery store or even a digital grocery store, what happens is a consumer goes in and they are about to buy things that they always buy. Maybe they even press the reorder button, and suddenly their bill for stuff that they used to buy last week is drastically higher because that chicken is a lot more expensive. In some way, that grocer is forced to pass down the expense and the inflation to the consumer. We are in a really interesting position where if there's a temporary increase in prices, and we know that this consumer likes chicken, but they also like pork, we could, at a time when chicken is spiking in prices, we could redirect our consumer to eat more pork and a little bit less chicken without any sacrifice to their experience. Really, we're able to transparently from them act like that personal assistant that not only understands their tastes, but actually saves them money without any explicit action. And that is another aspect of mental load reduction that comes from this changed paradigm where the shopping is not done from an empty cart, but instead from a full one built by your personal assistant, so to speak.
That's a really interesting use case that I didn't even think about, because I know when I'm making purchase decisions, I mean, obviously availability is a big part of it, but also price too. Like there are times when I'm like, well, maybe we're not in the place to spend so much on X item, or to your point, like, oh, maybe we'll do more veggie-based things over the next few weeks so we don't spend as much on chicken or meat or seafood. So being able to kind of guide people through that process or that decision tree, using all of the great data that you've been able to collect about them is really impactful. And this point around using AI to better serve recommendations, but also, I guess, predict decisions. I mean, that kind of ties into the food waste side of this whole thing, right? Like, can we expand upon that, explore that a little bit more? Because I think a lot of businesses are really trying to understand, how do we minimize our impact on the environment without risking the customer experience side or the ability to enjoy the product? So can we expand upon like how you guys tackle that?
Most definitely. I'm extremely passionate about this exact topic. In my mind, food waste is terrible for the wallet and particularly painful at times of high inflation that our consumers are today very concerned about. But food waste is also terrible for the planet. If you look at the stats, you'll see that food waste is responsible for as much of carbon emissions as airplane travel. What? And as such, if we're able to tackle it, my God, what an impact are we having for our customers? So a couple of things that we do there, and they're so synergistic with the core business model that it's not a bolt-on. It's not something that we do because, oh, we also want to be good for the planet. No, it is an intrinsic property of the model. Let me give you some intuition. When we get to know the customer by asking them all of these questions, we recommend them recipes, and everything that they need to prepare that recipe is included. And every piece of grocery that we send to them as a part of that recipe effectively comes with a plan. So much of the food waste we hear from our customers comes from, I come into a grocery store and these beautiful red peppers look so ripe and in season. And by the way, they're also on sale. I am definitely going to buy them and do something awesome with them. Except that, at least for me, what happens is they're in my fridge. I still don't have a plan. I don't do anything with them. A week later, I start feeling bad. And 2 days later, they end up in my trash bin. And that moment of throwing them away is it's heartbreaking. So we're able to help our customers avoid that by giving them a plan that comes with every grocery that they get from us. That's a part of our recipe. So that's kind of piece one, and a very important piece. Piece two around the impact for the planet is obviously this first thing that we talked about: less waste at the warehouse, less waste as a result of impulse purchases. But another part has to do with how we're able to fulfill the customer's desires. Like, I want to be eating more veggies, and maybe I want to be eating less beef because I care about beef's impact on the planet. Well, a lot of discussion that happens in the industry is kind of this assumption that the consumer is switching from, I eat a lot of beef, to, I am now going to switch to a vegan meal kit. Basically, extremes. And what we find is consumers, your average consumer, actually does not take such a polar position. And they, in most cases, are not amenable to making such a radical shift. What most customers are amenable to is perhaps eating one less beef meal per month. They won't even notice this if that's the modification they make to their own meal plan. And because we serve as their agents, effectively, their assistants executing upon their wishes, we can do that on their behalf. So if they say, I want to be eating more veggies, then the meals then we're going to be giving for them will have a little bit more veggies than they had last month. Not veggies only, not a fully vegetarian diet, absolutely not. If they say, I want to be eating less beef, it's not going to mean that they eat no beef at all. It will mean that we are gradually following their asks so that they can proceed at the pace that they want. And what we find that in this kind of a setup, we are able to help customers stick to their stated objectives. And again, coming back to the goals that they tell us about when they sign up, I mean, vast majority of our customers, 90%, say that after they sign up with us, they are hitting the health goals that they've told us about, that they're making progress against those goals. And that's only possible because the approach that we take is the approach of an advisor as opposed to an approach of a radical shift. Okay, every meal you're eating from now on is a vegan meal.
Oh, it's so fascinating. It's interesting, again, to have the experience as a consumer and then hear all of the work that goes in on the back end. And it seems like you have such a firm grasp on the mission and values of the Hungryroot business. And it's really the North Star of all of the technical decisions that are being made across the business. So I guess my big question for you is, what other initiatives are coming down the pike? What's priority for you, especially in the realm of AI, right? Because it already seems like you have a very firm grasp on how AI makes sense for your business and for the customers. So what else are you thinking about? What else are you pursuing right now that you're especially excited about?
In my mind, Alicia, we are just getting started on AI as a way of shopping for food. We do a reasonable job understanding our customers, and the 2/3 of our $400 million in sales coming from AI surely is flattering and makes us all feel warm and fuzzy inside. But I look at that and I look at all of the opportunities to respect what our customers tell us more, to ask better questions, to look at their actions and better infer what it is that they want. In my mind, we are just getting started. Our recommendations this year, we have tremendous initiatives, really amazing team working on AI and personalization. They will become meaningfully better. I think there's a lot more to do. It's kind of angle one. Angle two is expanding our offering. Let me give you some intuition. Today, our best customers, the ones that stick around for longest, who buy the most food, who tell us most vocally that they love Hungryroot, are families. And yet, our selection of products for children is fairly humble. And 6 months ago, we carried none of them at all. So if you ask me, how can AI be a bigger part of the grocery shopping in this whole family meal planning space? Well, carrying more products, more categories of products that the AI can help you shop for, understanding which ones would be the best fit for your family given the needs that you've shared. Well, if you carry more of those categories and more of those products, more of the SKUs, you can do a better job personalizing. So that's the other extremely important dimension. I'll give you another one. We recently started carrying vitamins because quite obviously a lot of our customers come to us with health goals like battling inflammation, for example, or feeling a little bit more energetic. Vitamins are a part of the solution to this. And just like we can recommend healthy foods, we've been recommending vitamins for them, thus helping take care of effectively a bigger solution to the set of problems that customers come to us for.
Yeah, that's great. And I will say, you guys have done a great job of expanding just your standalone grocery items to like the snacks, the dairy, eggs, like all of the adjacencies, I guess you could say, beyond the core meals, which I think is really beneficial for families that are trying to figure out the best way to maximize their time. So this is reminding me I have to go grocery shopping. I have to make my Hungryroot order. So thanks for the reminder.
Alicia, thank you. If there was one thing you could change about your Hungryroot shopping experience, what would that be?
Oh boy, that is a lot to think about. Honestly, I think you guys do a really good job. I think maybe the one thing to tinker with or think about is in certain households, maybe not everyone has the same dietary guidelines or restrictions. So like I'm thinking of like my husband who's like trying this whole keto thing right now. Like I'm not about that. So how can we best balance those two things in our recipes that were recommended? But again, that's very high level, but let me think on that a little bit more. I'll send you some thoughts.
Oh, Alicia, I actually love this point so much, as it's actually one of the things that we're talking about internally, understanding our customers more deeply. And of course, not everybody in the family is following the same diet. So if we can kind of grasp that a little bit better, we can probably do a better job recommending things for you and your husband. So thank you for sharing. And it's, my God, most definitely in line with our aspirations of being better recommenders, better personal assistants for you, for being
Amazing.
healthy.
No, this has been so insightful. Again, getting to go behind the curtain and really understand how not just everything works, but the mindset and the thought process that goes into everything. So Alex, thank you again so much for taking the time out to chat with me and for your transparency, for sharing so much insight and depth into the work that you're doing. It's so fascinating. Thanks again.
Alicia, thank you so very much. I very much enjoyed our conversation.
And to all of you listening, if you have any follow-up questions for Alex or ideas on how they can improve the Hungryroot experience, I'm sure he would love to hear from you. So drop us a line on social media. On LinkedIn, we're at Retail Touchpoints. We'll be sure to tag him in the post as well. Or on X at Our Touchpoints. Again, a big part of this show is continuing the conversation, building dialogue across our community. So we love to hear from you on social, but also your preferred podcast player. Leave us a rating or review. We'd love to hear from you. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, frankly, anywhere else. We're probably there as well. Let us know how we're doing. And of course, be sure to subscribe. We're talking to incredible executives like Alex every week, digging into what's trending, what's top of mind for their business, and of course, how they are shaping the future of retail and customer experience. But for now, that's it from us, everyone. Thanks so much again for joining us. We will see you next week. Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on your favorite podcast player. Until next time, keep mixing it up.